Thank you. Hello YouTube. It's been legitimately forever since I filmed a YouTube video or anything on this platform, but I'm back. I'm living in New York City for the summer and I'm feeling super inspired to do more creative work and things like that, so hopefully there'll be more videos coming soon. As some of you may or may not know, I am the author of an upcoming book series called the PopActivism book series. It's a YA, so young adult nonfiction book series, which focuses on activism, pop culture, and using your smartphone and social media to create positive change. It's kind of like a how-to activist book, but for the new generation. If I was a bit more well-known or internet famous, I would tweet out and ask you guys if you had any questions on the process of publishing books and things like that, but I think if I asked you guys to tweet me questions, there'd be like one or two. So instead, I'm gonna answer some questions that people have just asked me in person over the last 2 years since I signed the contract for this series. The question that I get asked probably the most is just, how did I get the publishing contract that I have? So the contract that I signed is a 3-book contract, which means basically when I signed, no matter what, there's going to be 3 books that are produced through the publishing house that I work with, unless I was to really like screw things up or whatever. For me, getting this contract was a lot different, I think, than the typical process for getting a publishing contract these days. I did not have a literacy. Scared for the fact that I just wrote a book series, but don't worry, I got this. I didn't have, and I don't have, a literary agent. Instead, when I was 18 and graduating high school, which was 2 years ago, a story about me went viral. I'll link something to it here so you can check it out. But basically I made my prom dress out of my old homework and I donated the money that I was going to spend on a dress to the Malala Fund. And on it I wrote, "I've received my education, not every woman has that right, malala.org. So it was in support of women's education worldwide and that kind of thing. Yeah, so it went viral and that got me a lot of exposure. A lot of people were contacting me with opportunities around that time. Then a lot of those opportunities fell through, and I think, yeah, like one thing you learn when a story about you goes viral is that all these opportunities come at you and it's super exciting, and then like a week later those people have forgotten who you are and they're on to the next thing. Around that time I also launched a blog, which I try to still post on. It's called PopActivism.com, and I just posted that because I had complete control of the content I was putting out there, and I was able to continue to produce things and keep my voice out there without having to get anyone else to give me permission to do so or sponsor my words. I was just able to keep producing things and try to keep some of the audience that came from that viral story along with me, because I didn't know what was coming next necessarily at that point, and I just like wanted there to be something for people to follow along with, so that I wasn't just like a one-hit wonder type of thing. So that's where my blog came from. And then the publishing house that I now work with saw my blog, saw my story, and long story extremely long, they approached me saying, "Do you want to write something for us?" And so then from that point onward, there was about a 2-month process of negotiating what this project could look like that I could produce for them. They really wanted to work with me and I really wanted to work with them, so that was good, but we didn't really know like what a project could look like. From that came this idea of this series. And so, as I said, that process of negotiating and together collaboratively with this publishing house coming up with the idea for this series took about 2 months. The thing is, it's definitely very rare, from my understanding, that to be negotiating what you're gonna write with a publishing house. I was really lucky that it ended up that it was more they were kind of signing me on as an author and then negotiating what the product was going to be. Usually like you have to have pre-written a product and then you're selling that to the publishing house, and you have to like have completed that process already, whereas when I signed I hadn't written a word of the entire series. So there was like a lot of trust put in me, which I didn't even realize wasn't normal until like relatively recently. A lot of things came together where I seemed like someone that could be a good person to invest in creatively, which is awesome. And honestly, even though like I do think that's a rare occurrence, I think it might become more and more common. One of my favorite authors lately is Caroline Calloway. I'll link her here, although I'm sure you've heard of her. She's written a book over the last few years, but through Instagram, so her captions have been about her life, and the intent has been to make it into a book at the very end. And so for her, in the very beginning, she definitely did not have a literary agent. She was just producing, again, content online, making kind of like a brand for herself, and then eventually a publishing house came along and I'm assuming was like, we want to work with you. Yeah, so although she was kind of producing a product, it was more just like she had created herself as something that people wanted to latch onto. So that's kind of what my process was as well. That was a very long answer to the first question, but hopefully that was interesting to you guys. I haven't really sat down and had this conversation with a lot of people. In this day and age, people are able to get creative contracts and work in so many different ways. It's really interesting to hear about like how other people are able to make money doing what they're passionate about. So hopefully this inspires you guys to keep producing content. Okay, the sun kind of went down, so sorry if it's a bit darker. Another question that people ask me is kind of just, what is the process of writing a book? Usually I write out notes, I kind of research like what kind of content I want to include in a book, what kind of shorter story arcs, like the things that I want to be in the book no matter what. The actual like bones. Then I try to basically organize it like a puzzle into a way that feels like it's gonna flow well, but there's still blanks to fill in. So that's like my outline, which includes, as I said, like notes and information. These are nonfiction books, so a lot of that, yeah, is like main ideas that need to be researched further into. And then once I have that organization of what I want to include in an outline, I have to just get myself to actually sit down and write it. So usually, honestly, like it's very cliche, but I'll go to a coffee shop because it'll make me work harder to have people moving around me and not just like be in my bed as I am now. And then I usually bribe myself and say like, you got to write this chapter as you sit here, you can't leave until you do, or like give myself a reward for writing a page, that kind of thing, because it can be hard to get started on writing something. It's not like just because you're passionate about a project doesn't mean that every time you sit down it's going to be really easy to write. You do have to, or I'm sure this is with any creative expression, like you need to make sure that you're disciplined with yourself and you're making sure that you have time allotted to actually be doing this project, investing yourself in it, and just forcing yourself to get started, because honestly it takes me like at least an hour to kind of get going, and then once I get into writing, like I can then usually like write for the rest of the day and it'll come really easily to me, but that first hour is like often painful. Then I usually read through it myself, just to make sure that there isn't anything like blatantly not really working. So then I send it off to my editor, and my editor will usually go through a process of maybe 2 or 3 back and forths with me. That could be grammar and spelling, it can be flow, it could be like as big as this section isn't like appropriate for the theme or the tone of the book. After my editor and I have gone back and forth and we feel like it's good to go relatively, it goes to a copy editor. And a copy editor then is looking for just mistakes that we've missed. So more spelling and grammar, like things that don't make sense, but it's just like the nitty-gritty kind of details of it. Once the copy editor has read through it, then it goes on to the graphic designer. And so the graphic designer at Orca Publishing, which is the publishing house that I am with, which I don't think I mentioned before, is kind of keeping in contact with me, asking for my feedback and input even at the graphic design phase. Once the baseline book is done, so that's all the right text pretty much and the right graphic design, the photos, everything, it gets made into an ARC. So an ARC is an advanced reading copy. So this is the ARC of my very first book. I don't know if it's gonna focus. Okay, that was dumb. It's not on automatic focus. Yeah, there we go. So it says advanced reading copy. And basically what this is the book almost finished, but not quite. So there's some photographs that'll have like this one, like FPO, I don't know if you can see that, but it basically means like that photo isn't necessarily approved, like the legal process hasn't ended with that photo, it might change. The point of having this one is basically that it goes out for reviews and it goes out to see how many orders different places are going to request. So it's kind of nerve-wracking because this is a project that like I've worked on for over 2 years and no one has seen any form of it except for myself and those who've worked on it with me. And now it's going out for people to look at and judge and review and then share those ideas and opinions of it with the world. And ongoing from now until infinity is marketing of this book. It's going to be definitely a learning curve for me as to how to actually get this book into your guys' hands and more people's hands. I also am in the process of planning a book tour where I'm going to go into schools and libraries and things like that. If you have any questions about writing and publishing and all that kind of stuff, you can ask them below, or you can tweet me at Erin Paisley. Actually, it's at Erin P, I believe. I hope that I'm going to see you guys a lot more on this platform during the summer and into the future. See ya! I'm still concerned that that's not how you say the word, but whatever.